Hey folks, Joe Valley here. Welcome back to another episode of the Quiet Light Podcast. Today we have Chris Wozniak, or Woz at quietlight.com, co-hosting with me, I want to say, right? He's our guest, but he took over quite a bit here because we're talking about the multiples that he's getting for selling. I don't want to use the word agency. You'll hear that we don't want to use the word agency throughout, but third-party platforms, service companies that people would consider agencies. The key point is that they're not your typical digital marketing agency, right? We're talking about content writing firms, medical firms, reputation firms, and he slews off a bunch at the end that he's talking to as well and getting valuations for. Typically, people think that agencies are hard to sell and the multiples are low. And if you have an agency where you are the name and face of it, and you eat what you kill and there's no recurring revenue to it, then the answer is, yeah, it's probably going to be a little harder to sell. You might need to stick around a little bit. But from a buying perspective, the type of companies that Woz is selling are really low risk. There's strong growth. There's recurring revenue to it, and it's highly, highly transferable. All the four pillars that we talk about that make these businesses worth a lot. And the margins are awesome. So if you're a business owner where you provide services to other business owners, yes, an agency of sorts, this is one you absolutely need to listen to. And if you're a buyer out there listening to this, because you're learning about this online world and you're thinking, I need to buy a physical product e-commerce business, this might open your eyes to considering an agency of sort. The margins are strong. If the people are in place, there's a recurring revenue. It's a really, really attractive model. So here we go, Chris Wozniak talking about his experience selling these types of companies at pretty strong multiples. Here we go. Chris Wozniak, welcome back again to the Quiet Light Podcast. You're, 3-4 times on now? This will be your third time. We just figured that out.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Yeah, this is the third time, but thanks for having me.
You told me you'd been on before. I'm like, no. This must have been webinars. I don't remember. And I looked it up and there it is, which is an indication that I got too much going on in my head or not enough brain cells left. Which do you think it is?
Maybe a little bit of both. I've actually done a couple webinars, I think, too, but I was with you. I couldn't quite remember what I've done. So
I know you were a little confused as well. You believed me when I said it. So
yeah,
maybe it
took me a minute. Yeah.
Maybe it's our collective brain cells or what we do for a living. We got so much stuff going on in our head.
Absolutely.
Anyway, for those folks that have not heard Chris on the podcast twice before, he's got a wealth of experience. He's one of our top advisors here on the team. You've been in the M&A world since 2001 or two? How long ago?
Yeah, 2003. Yep. So going on 19, almost 20 years.
That's
representing
crazy.
sellers. Yeah.
Amazing amount of experience. And you've been with the Quiet Light team for going on, 3 years now? Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
This is going to air. This is airing in February. So if we look back, January was a hell of a month for you, right?
Yeah. I think so. I had a couple deals that, obviously was hoping would close in late December, but I think just with holidays and attorneys being involved and people out of the office, they kind of are pushing towards January. But yeah, January should be an awesome month. Yeah.
And that's the way things go, right? We had, as a company, we had so much slated to close in December. We would have had a year where we topped 2021, which is a record year in M&A history. But a bunch of that stuff got bumped over to January. So at a glance, you've always got to look at the trailing 12 like we do for all the businesses that we look at as well. So
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're going to touch specifically on your work with agencies, which is something, we don't do a whole lot of. Interestingly enough, the call that caused me to be late to our recording of the podcast was somebody that was, saying how difficult agencies are to sell and that often there's, a better way out, which is through limited partnerships with, the senior people on the team. In your situation, you've had some success in selling several agencies at what seem like pretty healthy multiples so far. Talk to us about what you've worked on so far in the 3 years that you've been with the team in regard to agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a pretty common narrative, I would say, with agencies. And I can only speak from my experience, but I think it would the first thing to kind of mention is, and especially if hopefully we have agency owners that will eventually listen to this podcast, but I think it's important to note right off the bat that agencies are, in my opinion, very sellable, and that's from my own experience having sold them. I think when we think of agencies, we often think of just the typical kind of digital marketing agencies that are sort of the outsourced marketing arms of online businesses. But there's all kinds of agencies that exist that serve specific niches.
Yeah,
And there, and
it's exactly what I think of when I say agencies, and
yeah,
Stephen Polk at my Amazon guy, who was a sponsor of the Quiet Life podcast. If you didn't hear us tooting Stephen's horn, he's at myamazonguy.com, helps Amazon sellers really level up their knowledge. But it's exactly what I think of, Chris, as an agency that is an ad agency, essentially helping people market their products.
yeah,
And usually the expert is at the helm, and when they leave, the expertise goes away as well, and that's often what buyers are fearing.
that's right.
Yeah. So how do you overcome that? Go ahead.
Well, sorry, I was going to say I think that's a legit fear. It's a very real one. I you know the agencies I've sold in the last year or so, they weren't really digital marketing agencies, which is what I found interesting because you realize that there's these kind of niche within niche type agencies that they provide a very specific service to a very specific need in the marketplace. And so, like the first one I sold in the last year and a half was a content writing agency. That's an agency I represented. We were able to get it SBA pre-approved. We sold the company to an SBA buyer, but that's what they did. They had a team of writers that they were an outsourced agency that companies would hire to write their content for them. So, very specific niche.
I kind of remember that. I think I talked to the owner of that company at one point.
You may have, yeah.
So as a buyer, what I would look at in that situation is, am I going to come in and operate the business and the team is going to stay in place? That's kind of the secret sauce to being able to sell an agency. I would think that, and recurring revenue is also a wonderful thing. What are the key things that you see that are necessary in order to successful sell an agency to an outside person?
Well, I think one, I always go back to the basics, which is kind of Quiet Light's foundational aspects of valuation, which would be kind of the four pillars. Whether you're a agency or any other online business, I mean, it helps to have growth, which is, has a huge impact on the valuation. Obviously, the size of the business, the scale, the larger it is, the less perceived risk. Documentation, regardless of if you're an agency or not, you need to have clean financials, SOPs. And if possible, I always stress this, I can't stress it enough, try to have tax returns that resemble your P&Ls, because we do want to try to get it SBA pre-qualified. But
the more I'm in this world, I don't understand how you would have tax returns that don't resemble your P&Ls.
I know.
It's called flying by the seat of your pants, not using QuickBooks or Xero or whatever it might be. Using a spreadsheet. Okay.
Yeah, minimizing your taxable income, but you're doing that in lieu of potentially a much higher sales price down the road, and there's no comparison on the return.
Yeah.
And then transferability, which is maybe one of the lesser of the foundational aspects, but pretty self-explanatory how transferable is the business. But to get to your question, I think transferability may be have more weight and importance with agencies than maybe a typical online business, because like you mentioned, how much involvement does the owner have in the business? Are they the first person face that the new customer sees when they're onboarding? Is the owner the salesperson? Are they the brand? I've actually talked with agencies where the name of the agency is the owner's name, and the URL is their name, and on the front page of the website is their face. So those are a little bit different discussions when I talk to sellers like that, and they're usually very open to this. But my suggestion, obviously, is we could probably sell your business, but it's going to take a pretty big hit towards valuation, in my opinion, versus if you have the time to remove yourself slowly from the day-to-day operation, remove yourself from the website, potentially rebrand or rename the website. So yeah, those are very real things when dealing with agencies. And like with this content writing agency, the seller, it was a husband and wife, but the wife was really the face of it. She did a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of Facebook lives, and that sort of a thing. So we were actually able to work through that. The buyers, the husband and wife, also felt like they could kind of take the reins on that. But again, she did have a very, very trained team, really good writers that had a pretty good history with the company. So I think that made the buyers much more comfortable.
What about the recurring revenue aspect in that business? Were there clients that had that agency, on retainer, where they'd write a certain amount of articles every month for them, and it was just recurring revenue, or was it eat what you kill sort of thing?
Yeah, no, and that's also a good question when it comes to valuation. It's like, are you a company, an agency that has monthly or quarterly or maybe annual customers, and many of them do. This one did as well. Do you do a lot of stuff a la carte, which would be maybe more customized? That can be a little bit more difficult because it's like, what is that customization, and is that trainable and transferable? So yeah, but with the 3 agencies that I've sold recently, they had a ton of repeat customers on a monthly basis, with some variation to quarterly and annual. That was a much smaller percentage of the total revenue.
What other term can we come up with besides agency? Because as you said, it's we all think of a certain thing, and there's a stigma associated with it that make it less appealing to buyers or less sellable. And of course, I'm just playing around, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's really, I mean, it's a, when you think about the content writing service, it's a service, it's an agency, it's a service. Is there any other term that you would apply to it other than the simple agency model? Probably not.
Oh, no, that's a great question though, because it is about the presentation, right? I mean, it would be more attractive to see content writing third party provider, or content writing third party service or service provider.
And I'm asking this because I'm thinking about the title of this podcast already. So, folks, if you're listening to this podcast, it's because Chris and I worked out a good title for the podcast to draw you in and listen to this, as opposed to thinking it was just a digital marketing agency that we were talking about how to sell. So,
yeah, that's a tricky one.
It is. It is. So, talk to me about the buyers. Well, first of all, what kind of multiple did you come out of the gate with? How close to that did you end up selling the business for? And what kind of pushback did you get from buyers on the fact that it was, in fact, a service agency?
So on the content writing third-party service provider, we came up with, I think we did a 3.2. I took some notes, a 3.2 multiple, and we basically sold for asking price. And I would say, when it comes to buyers with agencies or third-party providers, what I've noticed is, and this has been true for all 3 launches, that I don't get necessarily the volume of clicks on the package, but for sure, I would say I get much more buyer intent. So in other words, the buyers that do inquire, they understand what they're inquiring about, and they're very interested in it. And typically they have some type of aspect to their background that lends itself to what they're looking at, which it blows me away every time, because when I launch something, in my head anyway, I'm like, not that it's a bad business, so don't take this wrong, but I'm like, who's going to buy this? Like who will the buyer be? Because it's so nichey, and maybe a niche within a niche, and it's a quote unquote agency. And I've been blown away because, often like I had a medical writing agency provider, and there are writers and they're medical. So just keep on layering that. And I'm like, boy, this is going to be interesting, when we launch this. And I bet you we had 10 to 12, like hot and heavy, want to have buyer seller call buyers.
That's a lot. Having 10 to 12 buyer seller calls right away
yeah, it's great.
It's a busy week.
That's double what I would hope is a good launch,
Yeah.
And they all had either backgrounds in writing, managing writers, maybe a medical background to some degree, and a couple had like both. which, I mean, you can predict that,
as we talk about this, I can't help but think about, like my own entrepreneurial experience and whether or not I'd want to buy an e-commerce business where somebody's built up a brand that sells, on Shopify and Amazon, and how I'm going to have to innovate and compete and launch new products and learn. Maybe it's because I'm at the end of my learning curve here, Chris. But I'm like,
I hear you.
That doesn't sound as appealing as this really niche business that has a customer base with some recurring revenue and transferable staff that has less competition. I'm not competing against 13 sellers in China that are just stealing my images and trying to reduce the price on Amazon and sell with fake reviews. It's almost like these are more established, real, successful businesses that have those four pillars really strong, risk, growth, transferability, and documentation, and they should sell at higher multiples. And it sounds like the few that you've sold are trading at a pretty strong multiple. You said 3.2 for the content writing third-party platform business.
Yeah.
And then the medical writing business as well. That was a strong, what kind of multiple were we talking about there?
We were at roughly a 4.2 multiple on $800,000 in trailing 12-month SDE. So very, very strong. I mean, I think their gross revenue was like 1.3 or 1.4 million. So that's another thing. These agencies are just so profitable. Yeah, the margins are just crazy. And we got that one SBA pre-qualified as well. So it was with that one under contract at 3.4 million. And we had multiple offers at that. So it was really the sellers kind of deciding who they wanted to go with.
Okay, so both of these were SBA eligible. I want to talk about the benefits of running an agency or buying an agency in terms of cash flow, but also just want to focus in on the SBA eligible aspect first. Do you think both of these sold quickly with multiple offers because of the SBA aspect?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so quickly cover for the business owners that are out there, the agency owners that are out there. What do you have to do to run the business right to become SBA eligible?
Yeah, I think if I was to tell you quickly, like maybe the two most important things is have clean financials, meaning your P&Ls, whether it be QuickBooks or whatever other third-party financial software you're using. Excuse me. And then I would say you have to have tax returns that closely resemble your P&Ls. And by what I mean closely resemble is you can have, minimize your taxable income if it's by way of your salary and things that are recognized by underwriters with the lenders, but you don't want to run a bunch of things that are personal through the tax return, because at the end of the day, there's a bunch of items that underwriters and lenders will disallow when it comes to their calculation of the available income and how that translates to their debt coverage ratios, because that's what it boils down to. Is they have a specific coverage multiplier, and if you don't hit that on the tax returns, even if your P&Ls show you clearly do, they default to the tax returns. So there's really no getting around it. And then with your financials, you want to be on an accrual basis, recognizing expenses when the sale has occurred, not when you've had a lump sum purchase of something or anything like that, because cash basis will typically reduce your income. So you want to be on an accrual basis if possible.
Yeah, and there's a ton of bookkeepers out there, folks, that do that. We've got a resource partner page up now, quietlight.com/partners. That's got 6 or 7 bookkeepers that our team has worked with over the years that just keep presenting really clean, healthy profit and loss statements that allow us to sell their clients' businesses for a higher value. So check that out at quietlight.com/partners. Okay, so if you're running an agency of any sort, get your financials in order so they fairly closely match your tax returns, and keep in mind that an add back schedule is still part of the valuation, and the SBA lenders do the same thing with the add back schedules. The next part, though, that I wanted to chat about was I forgot already, Chris.
Well,
there were two things.
You had a good one that was going to segue into something I wanted to talk about, which is kind of, how attractive these businesses really are.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You're the host now. I'm going to hand over the keys here.
Don't make me the host,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. So typically in an e-commerce business, we're looking at anywhere between 10 and 20% profit on the bottom line. And then you get to the content businesses and you get really excited because you're doing $1 million in revenue and 850,000 in profit. Here in this situation, you're at 50 or 60% profit, which is huge. It's a beautiful thing. And you would think that the multiples would be even higher because of it. Obviously, they're pretty strong. What you sold, pretty strong multiples.
Yeah.
But you've got much more margin for error as you're running these agencies because of the profit margin. If you screw up in a year and you overspend on something, whether it's people or travel or whatever it might be, it's not the end of the world because your margins are so much higher. Is that what you're seeing as well?
That's what I've seen. Yeah, it's a huge cushion. I just sold a reputation management and branding agency as well, and I think if I'm doing my math right, their net margin was like above 60%. That's the bottom line compared to their revenue at about 60%.
So 3 agencies: a reputation management company, a medical writing company, and what was the first one?
Content writing.
Content writing for any kind of business, I assume then, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wonder why the writer aspect of it. I get the reputation management, right? How, somebody's got a bad mention on page 1, they can suppress that and get at page 10, I guess, by overwhelmingly positive things that they write. But why do you think the agency in the writing niche is so prevalent, or is it just that this is what happened to be what you sold and another one fell in line?
I think it was just they fell in line. But I think between the content writing and the medical writing, this also goes back to something you were saying. It's like from a buyer's perspective, you always hear the term barrier to entry, and sometimes those barriers are stronger than others, I would say. But like with this medical writing company, you had about 100 writers.
Wow.
And I would say I think it was like 15 to 20 of them were kind of their main writers that were always working. And of those, many of them were physicians that had either left their practices or had smaller practices, maybe only open a couple days a week. And then they were kind of augmenting their salary with this medical writing because honestly, a lot of them are making, 100 to 150,000 doing this. And they get to do it in the comfort of their home.
Wow.
We're talking about physicians writing not content. They're writing labels on medications, medical inserts that you've seen some of those. They can be pages and pages.
I can do that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
I've sold supplements online before. Does that qualify me?
Yeah. You just Google how to do medical writing. I think you'll figure it out. But it's real tiny writing on would be a chapter in a book really once you blew it up. But that's the kind of I think to me that's a barrier to entry to have
huge
put this team together of highly educated, trained physicians that what they're writing is actually extremely important because it could mean life or death with the people reading it, the end user.
Maybe I shouldn't do that then.
Yeah, you shouldn't. That's what I was going to say.
I'll stick with what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
The guest on the podcast.
Yeah, a guest on the podcast, not the host anymore. But so that I think in the reputation management agency, same thing. We went out at a 4.75 multiple on roughly 1.6, 1.7 million in trailing 12-month SDE. And I think over the course of, we relaunched it 2 months in because their business had kind of grown. So we took it down and kind of updated the numbers. But from the relaunch, which I would consider the launch, I think we had 6 or 7 offers on it. The individual, it was SBA pre-qualified. And just because, by the way, we're SBA pre-qualified doesn't mean as a seller, we have to sell to an SBA buyer. What it does mean is it will put, I think, upward pressure on the value because it puts all the buyers on notice that there's more opportunity for them to get into the mix.
Yeah, it gets the cash buyers off the fence. They don't have as strong a position because they know when it's SBA pre-qualified, there's going to be other buyers that, coming at it with 10% down and 10-year financing. So
that's right.
You jump at it quicker. Of the 7 or 8 offers that you got for the reputation management company, did you have any cash buyers or were they all SBA buyers?
We did. We had, I think, a couple cash buyers, but one was a really, really strong cash buyer from Chicago, and he paid a 4.5 multiple all cash.
Oh, you sold it all cash. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that because there was a referral fee on that as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. That was the one. Yeah.
I'm going to keep plugging things here. Look, I plugged the partner page, folks. Quietlight.com/partners. And then referrals at quietlight.com. The person that referred this seller to us just got a 10% referral fee to the tune of what would pay for 2 years of education at a state school.
Yes.
At least NC State. Go ahead and look up the tuition. It's basically $50,000.
That's right. Yep.
For an email introduction. And this is someone, the person that referred these folks over to us, I sold their business what feels like a decade ago. And I know it wasn't, but it was an affiliate platform business. Chris, I don't know if you know the story, but they had tried to go out and have an investment banker sell their affiliate platform for 8+ figures. And it didn't really work. And then they came back down to earth and connected with me. And I knew absolutely nothing about affiliate marketing. I remember when I first joined Quiet Light after selling my own business and chatting with Mark about it. He's like, well, what models do you know nothing about? I was like, yeah, affiliate marketing. I know nothing. Yeah. So 3 years later, I'm selling an affiliate marketing platform of all things. But we got through it. We did it. And it was one of the toughest buyers I've ever dealt with, ever. And then the same folks, this is the life of an entrepreneur. The same folks went out and launched another company in the pet niche, basically an agency, recurring revenue. And Chuck ended up selling it for just under $5 million.
Wow.
So 2 businesses. And then they're referring clients over to us as well of this size and caliber, where it's just literally an email introduction. And then we do our thing. And it takes a while, obviously. But it turns out that, they're going to get a very healthy check, higher than most people make in a year.
Yeah.
Just by sending an email. So if you've got friends or colleagues out there, folks, that we don't already have a relationship, that want to get a valuation and eventually sell their business, send an email intro to referrals@quietlight.com. You can put my name, Mark's name, Chris's name in the salutation, doesn't matter. Will reach out to us. It'll actually be Deanna that will reach out to you because she runs the referral program now. Okay, that's my plug on the referral program. Now back to the show, folks. Chris, what are we talking about here?
We're talking about third-party service providers, often referred to as agencies.
Third-party service providers. That's what we're going to talk about. That's something like that will be in the title. So this last one, you got all cash. It was SBA eligible, but it got the cash buyer off the fence. 4.5 multiple, all cash, a pretty big number. What kind of training and transition period is required by the sellers in this situation? Do they have to stick around for a long time to help this person take over the business? Were they deep in the day-to-day operations of it?
It varies obviously between businesses, but this one was unique because it was 2 owners. There was the founder who owned 100%, and then he brought in a partner about, I think, 2 or 3 years ago for 15% ownership. And the new partner, the 15% owner, was kind of and he was brought on for this, the day-to-day person managing his team. They had a physical office kind of near the West Coast, but he was also very integral with sales and bringing new customers in. So a little bit different because the buyer recognized the importance of the 15% owner and wanted him to retain or give him ownership in the new co-purchasing. So I believe took some chips off the table, maybe half of what his 15% was, and then reinvested the other half into a percentage of the new company, and then got all kinds of perks, a really strong salary, some bonuses that would initiate really quickly, insurance, monthly car payment, and then an opportunity to be awarded additional ownership interest if certain thresholds were met over the next 1 to 2 to 3 years.
And then a second bite of the apple someday if they decide to sell it again. It's much larger company. This person is obviously good at what they're doing because, when I initially first talked to the 85% owner, the company wasn't that big. So they've grown pretty consistently. So that's another thing for you agency owners out there or buyers that are thinking about buying a business like this is having a really good operator in the business that maybe will earn equity over time and can transition with a sale. And that will, again, install even more confidence in buyers to take a chance at buying that company at a strong multiple as well.
Yeah.
But tough to do. You got to get to a certain size in order to do that. That's the challenge with smaller companies. Giving up 15%. Did the 85% owner just give up 15%, or did he have him buy it, or how did that work out? You have any recollection on that?
I do. Yeah. Of the 7.25, he essentially, the main owner and founder, got 85% of that cash. Boom, done. And then
I mean, when the original owner gave the 15% to the new partner, was there a buy-in, or was it just you're going to earn this 15% over the next 24 months or something?
Yeah, more of a sweat equity. Yeah, there was no buy-in.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
But again, you got to be a certain size to do that. I know the original owner wasn't working full time in the business, even when I talked to him, I don't think.
Yeah. The original owner, I mean, he created an awesome business, and then I think he made the right move with the partner he brought in. Both awesome guys. Actually think we're going to be doing a podcast with them in a few weeks, actually, I think. So
Indeed we are. We are. Excellent.
Yeah.
Chris, the selling of third-party service companies called agencies, I'm still working on the title here. It's a great subject, simply because there's not been that many of them over the years that we've done here at Quiet Light. But there are really talented people out there building businesses like this, especially when they come from, a non-entrepreneurial background, right? So these medical writer, content writer, I bet they were just writers in their field at one point and started this as a side hustle and built a business up. So
that's right.
I think as the entrepreneurial world in the online space continues to grow, we're going to see more and more of these. And it just helps people that are taking the risk to build these companies to have an exit path, and helps us understand as a company the value that buyers are willing to pay for these. So keep it up.
Yeah, it's cool. I've had, in the last quarter, I was looking at it a couple of days ago, I think I've had 8 to 10 valuation calls with other agencies. And I've got some lead sources where I'm kind of getting those more and more now, as people are kind of realizing that, hey, maybe I can actually sell mine. And what's interesting is it's not the typical digital marketing agencies, as we kind of talked about. It continues to be these, I've got a resume writing provider, brand development. I've got a real estate kind of, for lack of a better term, a real estate kind of content agency. That's not the best way to describe it, but it's very demographic specific. So that kind of opens up the world of potential buyers on those kinds of things, maybe synergistic, strategic. But, at the end of the day, it never ceases to amaze me how people can find an underserved market and provide a service that's an extremely profitable business and run it and grow it. And that's what I'm seeing with a lot of these agencies. They're even in this strange economic time, they're doing really well. They're making a lot of money. They're increasing. They're profitable. Just a repeat business being 50 to 70 to 80% recurring revenue is, it goes back to what you said. Like these are really attractive businesses. We just need to kind of change the narrative or the perspective on them, because they do sell. I mean, I know from personal experience that they do sell, and they're selling for multiples, often very competitive with some of the more sought after SaaS and content site businesses. And that's been interesting to me to realize that.
Yeah, it almost sounds like if you could all the right pieces in place, that it would be less risk than a content site where you might sometimes be at the whim of Google.
Yep.
Folks, Woz's email is woz@quietlight.com. You can reach out to him directly if you want to chat about an agency, third-party platform selling services that you might have an interest in getting evaluation on. You can always fill out the form at quietlight.com, click the evaluation form. You can specifically put in there that you want to chat with Woz as well. Or again, hit him up with an email, woz@quietlight.com. Woz, You're awesome, man. Thanks for hosting this Quiet Light podcast. Appreciate it.
I got you, Joe. Thank you for having me. It was awesome.
All right, bud. Talk soon.
All right. See ya.